But the Chicago Bears have hired Detroit Lion Ben Johnson to save Caleb Williams. Poll question is, Smitty, can Ben Johnson save Caleb Williams?
Yes, he can, and yes, he will. And I'm not even like the biggest Caleb Williams fan in the world, but he showed me enough signs this year and enough flashes to where the talent is there. And Ben Johnson, we saw the last few years how explosive that Lions offense is. And the Bears have a ton of weapons. They're going to get more weapons this year with the draft. You have a young guy who can relate to Caleb Williams, a great offensive mind. He's going to put Caleb in the best situations to be successful and to win. And I think we're going to see a really different year too with Caleb Williams, more precise and more importantly, more wins. And I think Caleb Williams has that skill set in him. And I think he just needed the right coach to be with him in order to like fully bring that out. You know what I'm saying? The old coaching staff that was there, we saw them with Justin Fields. And Justin Fields didn't perform his best. You see Justin Fields go to Pittsburgh with the Steelers, in the games he played, actually looked halfway decent. You know what I'm saying? So we understand how important system is and coaching is and things like that. And I think Ben Johnson's a guy who can bring out a better version of Caleb Williams. And again, we went so hard on Caleb, you know what I'm saying, because of the expectations. But at the end of the day, it was his rookie year, bro. And everybody not going to have a Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is doing some stuff that's crazy. You know what I'm saying? Last year we praised C.J. Stroud. This year Jaden Daniels has even trumped what he did last year. So I understand when you have someone in your same class that is so successful, you're going to be compared to that guy. And it's going to cause a, I guess, more negative press going against you. But at the end of the day, Caleb Williams did show some signs this year during his rookie year. And I think next year Ben Johnson will bring out a better version of Caleb Williams.
A guy that paints his nails will never win shit in a grown man's league. I'm just going to go to that. Let me just go straight there. Number one. Number two, I got to address the elephant in the room and the bigger picture, the macro scale of this.
Hey, the macro.
I want to be macro here, not micro. Smitty, let's talk, Smitty. Let's talk about brass tacks here that no one else will talk about today, because we think outside the box here on the realest show on planet Earth, and we tell the truth, regardless of who said it, Smitty or I. It's going to be our truth. So listen, let me ask you this, Smitty. Did Ben Johnson tank on the Detroit Lions?
No.
Well, let's dive into that. Number one, he had his DC already hired in Dennis Allen. So he got hired yesterday, and Dennis Allen's the DC. It's very like crazy how all that happened. Boom. Kudos to him, but let's dive into this deep thought. Okay, I want to deep dive with this, Smitty, into this. I got to ask you, what is the hurry in hiring a head football coach for a professional football organization? I have to ask, because this isn't college. There's nothing more than just the combine, which the coaches really have a very minute role in anyway. That's done by scouting, NFL and college scouting, GMs that are already in place in Chicago, ownership groups, and all that. The head coach has very little to do with it other than, all right, maybe I'll tell you. You can still get the coach in there well before the combines and the scouting draft parties and all that. I'm just telling you, a long, long time away, Smitty. You don't have to rush the hires in the NFL. I do not understand what the rush is. To me, I feel rushed, Smitty, watching this game, or watching this hire. I feel rushed knowing coaching that Ben Johnson clearly didn't get the job yesterday, 2 days after his Lions put up a fucking, let's be honest, the worst performance of the season, ironically. I can see, okay, you play the Eagles or you play a hot Rams defense on a dry ground, neutral side. You play a Chiefs defense. You played the Commanders. Shout out to Commanders playing well.
They hot, though. They hot.
No, they're hot. They're hot. I agree. But let's be honest, their defense hasn't been stellar. The Lions offense has put up 45 points 6 times. What happened to your offense the other day?
And 431 though, still with Jared Goff who threw 3 picks.
Yeah, I know. But then I fast forward, Smitty. I fast forward, and Monday comes, and this guy's not only the coach, he's got a whole staff already. You cannot, Smitty, I'm just giving out real gems here. You cannot, it's not really gems, it's actually knowledge, but a lot of people won't understand. You can't sit here and game plan for an NFL playoff game. This is fact, by the way, it's impossible. To game plan for a game, put your all into this game, lose. Sunday comes around. I get a phone call, hey, you're going to take the job? I know you've already interviewed twice. We want you. All right, cool, thanks. Yesterday, press conference, he's there, flies from Detroit to Chicago, 20-minute flight. Who are you going to hire, coach? Already hired the whole staff. I got Dennis Allen as my DC. I'm going to hire my young QB coach as the OC. I got an O-line guy already. Smitty, when did you hire these guys? You already have had to have discussions with all these people in the process to enable to hire them. It's just a fact. You had to go through and hire these guys, Smitty, well before. You didn't just call everybody Sunday and say, hey, I got the job. You want it? You want it? You want it? You want it? These other guys are interviewing too. This is a conversation piece that's been had and been talked about for probably weeks, Smitty. I would say maybe longer. So is your full investment in the Detroit Lions? I find this to be what is ruining football at its highest level, not only in NFL, but in college. The investment by these guys who have gotten these opportunities. And I shout out to Ben, who turned down a job last year. And I'm not even blaming him. I'm blaming the process and the rush job. It's not college, Smitty. I don't need to go out and recruit and go get seen and be doing all this other shit like college would. You're the NFL. There's nothing to do. Your guys are on vacation. You're not having a team fucking meeting in January. You're not going out here and doing winter conditioning. This isn't college. You're basically going to chill and evaluate college football players for the next 3 months and do nothing else. You're not rebuilding a weight room. You're not creating a fucking culture. You're not doing any of that until April, May, or June when OTAs hit, Smitty. So what is the fucking rush to take these coaches and interview them during their playoff runs, respectively? All these guys that have been getting, coach, come interview for it. The NFL has to change it. You had 2 coordinators, Smitty. 2. If I'm Dan Campbell, I'm putting a lid on it. No, you're not fucking interviewing nowhere. We got a fucking Super Bowl to win. If I'm Dan Campbell today, Smitty, I'm livid at the process, Roger Goodell, the NFL, how you're poaching my coordinators during a fucking playoff run.
I feel you.
Like, people in the chat, why do you care? Because I like to see good football, and I coached, and I know how it is to be poached, and I understand the process, and this is an all-in, 2 foot in, not 1 foot out profession. You fucking nobody that's never done anything. That's why. So if you're poaching both my coordinators, Smitty, during a playoff run, to me it seems like a disrespectful slap in the face to not only my program and organization, but my head coach who hired you to. Like Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell are boys.
Yeah.
And Ben Johnson was a young coach coming up when Dan Campbell became the interim head coach in Miami as a young 28-year-old in 2008.
Yeah.
So I once heard Urban Meyer speak at a clinic, and I've known Urban a long time since his Bowling Green days. And we were talking, and he said, man, I don't allow my coaches to shop on the job. And I was a young coach, and I'm listening, and I want to hear. I'm like, okay, what's it? Don't shop jobs while you're on the job. And I live by that. That was one thing. I live by a lot of his things. I live by a lot of Carroll things. I live by a lot of Saban things. I live by a lot of Gino Auriemma things. And I have some Belichick things. There's other people I take. Of course, John Wooden's Pyramid of Success. There's a lot of coaching, leadership, things I took. And that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take that. You're supposed to steal. This is football. Football is a thieves game.
Yep.
Dan Campbell can't put in a game plan on offense, defense, special teams while his coordinators are out of the building and they're interviewing across the country and all these different places. And I got to sit here and fuck, man. my players don't like as a leader, Smitty, you're not feeling like, are my players seeing this? Are my players like knowing that this guy's not all in and we're about to play a playoff game and we haven't won a Super Bowl yet? I get it. We're not Kansas City and we've won 2 or 3 games. Like, dog, I just think it's a bad look, homie. Like, what's the rush, Smitty? That's all I want to know. I want to ask Sheena maybe. She's an insider and covers an NFL team. What is the rush on hiring in the NFL? It's not college. And I think it's a slap in the face in those players that have earned the right. The Lions were the 1 seed.
Right. Nice.
And I can't believe, I just can't believe the investment was there and I'm not going to say Ben Johnson's not a professional. He turned down jobs last year to stay, and I gave him credit for it.
Right.
But the process is the issue I have, not the fucking, not him, Right. Like, he shouldn't even be involved in an interview. Nobody should be until the Super Bowl's over. The Super Bowl's February 9th, Smitty. What are they doing between now and February 9th? And I've asked a lot of people, Lombardi's, and I know there's little things they do, but there's nothing that's going to change the game next year's outcome in February in the NFL.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I saw somebody's comment in the chat, and it's kind of one that I had. I think it's just because of the competition of the other teams who are also looking for head coaches, where it's like if you don't interview them first and early and you wait and another team gets them early, you might miss out on the opportunity to even get the right head coach to your team. So I think that is a good point, number one. Number two, and I mean, again, this is just me guessing and speculating. I understand.
I'm just saying Goodell needs to say, we're not, this is the open day.
Yeah, like none of y'all can do it, right? Y'all all got to wait. I hear you for sure. But let me ask you this, though. Even in NFL level, don't you think the earlier you're able to find out who your head coach is, that the easier it is to figure out just like, okay, what players we want to keep, what scheme am I bringing in, what defense coordinator am I bringing in? Because the players on that current roster may not fit what you're bringing and what the defense coordinator you're hiring in. So it's just I do think there's a lot of logistics that needs to be figured out in the offseason, and the earlier you can figure that out, the better in terms of like going into April with the NFL draft. You mentioned the combine in February. Just the sooner, I think, the better in terms of just figuring out all the nuances of a new team.
I don't agree.
Some new logistics. Like Ben Johnson has to figure out where he's going to move to, his house is going to rent, how to even get to the stadium, where's all like little stuff that we don't think about, but all that matters in terms of just being comfortable in your new situation. So like I hear you for sure from a current team perspective and how Dan Campbell may feel right now, but I do understand what the other side is thinking. They're like, man, let's figure this thing out early, get our head coach we want now, so we can start slowly figuring out and putting together the building blocks to lead to hopefully a new situation in our next season.
No, that I don't agree, because this is NFL. They got movers. The NFL has its own moving companies. They move their guys. It's not a rush job. My point is, though, if the time has rule changed, if the time is allowing this, then there is no rush job. There is no hurry to get in February. There is none of this happening if Goodell puts a cap on when you can start to interview. And I say you do it after the Super Bowl and it's on an even playing field. To me, it's uneven now because there's teams in the playoffs that are having their players and their coaches poached while they're getting ready for a team that's both earned it to be in the postseason, while your team has not earned the postseason, and now you're poaching teams from the postseason to make your franchise better while we're vulnerable. My staff is vulnerable because I'm prepping and getting ready, doing scouting reports for an opponent while you're sitting around watching who the fuck you look at and want. Because that's the window, that's opportunities open from Roger Goodell and the hierarchy. I think you stop that, number one. Number two, there's nothing to your other point, there's nothing that they can do early in February because this is the NFL, it's not college. There's a salary involved, there's a cap involved, and there's roster guarantees who's back and who's free agents. That doesn't need to be worried about today or in February, not until after the Super Bowl, which is a couple weeks away now. What's the difference between now and a couple weeks in the NFL? I can go online right now and look at who's a free agent for the roster of the Chicago Bears and who's not. And I'm just a pedestrian. I don't need to even know anything inside. So that's not going to help him in February. And if he can't figure out where they move him as an organization, because he's not buying his house, they will. and can't figure out how to get to the goddamn stadium from his house, then he shouldn't be coaching anything.
I know he can't. I'm just saying. Like,
I know what you're saying, but I'm just saying.
Certain logistics that,
you don't need 6 months for that, Smith. You don't need 6 months for that.
So basically, you saying NFL head coaches ain't doing shit until the draft.
All they're doing is just evaluating film. They're evaluating college talent. They're putting together a staff, obviously, who they can get and all that. If to me, if you made it even, though, and you open the time window until after the Super Bowl before anybody can be interviewed, makes it simple and even to me. Now, guess what? Everybody has an open opportunity. And now highest bidder, best organization, history, owner, all that now can be weighed out, Smitty, by everybody. And I'll even take a step further. It actually will help out and eliminate the fucking Rooney Rule. And last night we had a great discussion with two of my boys. I'm like, hold on. So Eddie George got brought in for the Chicago Bears interview. Right. And I know Eddie well. Eddie's a great friend of mine. I know Eddie really well. He got brought in on an interview, dog, and an hour later they hire Ben Johnson. I'm just going to be honest. That's not how fucking jobs are hired. Can we stop? That's not how people work. It was a Rooney Rule box check. And listen, if you're Eddie, and I texted him, you got to take it because he's never had an NFL interview. You got to take the interview, right? But no going in. He knew going in, he had no shot. And literally minutes later, they hire Ben Johnson. Is that not a backhanded slap in the face to everybody out here that goes through the process and really goes and prepares and thinks they have a shot at a job?
It is, but like we always talk about this. I don't know what he's supposed to do though, because at least when your name.
I'm not saying him. I'm not saying him. I'm just saying
the process is messed up for sure. But at least once your name gets mentioned, then you would hope that like, okay, you know, it kind of makes you more of a popular candidate for future jobs. Now, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like you mentioned before how certain schools would try to interview you just to like make the job seem more sexier for other candidates. Like in a way, I think this makes Eddie George's name come to mind now for other opportunities that make him apart. But you're right, the system is all screwed up, and they're just interviewing people just to check off a box, which I don't know how you
Marshall Falk. I had Marshall Falk on the show here. If Deion stays at Colorado, maybe trying to hire. Listen, I've known Marshall a long time. I've had Marshall on this show when I first started the show, and we were talking about this, and Marshall said it straight out, like, stop taking those interviews. And I get it. You're Marshall Falk, though. Like, Eddie George, Marshall Falk, very similar. Eddie's a Heisman Trophy winner. Both had great careers, college and pro. Marshall was like, man, with our agents, we already know who's getting the job, or even if we have a shot at it, because they tell you different things. Hey, dog, this is a prep interview. That's what they told Eddie. It's a prep interview. Go in there, whoop-de-whoop. Marvin Lewis was told, hey, man, listen, Mike McCarthy's getting this job. Because Marvin Lewis interviews, and an hour later, Mike McCarthy got the job, got announced as the head coach of the Cowboys too, whatever, 4 years ago or whatever year, how long ago that was. So, like, these guys know, and it's crazy. It's like, I'm not saying the coach interviewing. I'm saying the owner should feel some type of way by saying you without knowing, you have slapped all these other coaches in the face without even letting them know. Not only them, but all the other coaches out there aspiring to be coaches.
Right.
Like, you interviewed me, and an hour later you named the coach. Here's my point. Jerry, do it if you want to do it, but wait a day.
Right.
To announce the motherfucker. So everybody out there doesn't think this was a token bullshit interview that's a slap in everyone's face out here. And all my assistant coaches who are trying to aspire to be head coaches don't just get discouraged. Because you guys don't understand that shit trickles down. And I'm just saying, man.
Now with the Eddie George Ben Johnson thing, I think they did wait a day though, right? Like they didn't literally wait, like hire someone Ben Johnson an hour later.
Yeah.
He's gonna do it literally an hour later.
He interviewed yesterday. They hired Ben Johnson.
Damn. I thought they interviewed 2 days ago. Damn, that's crazy.
No, because the Lions played. The Lions played Smitty.
Yep, Sunday. Today's Tuesday, so I guess that is crazy. That's insane. So
I'm just saying, dog. It's a mockery to me. I don't know. It's a mockery to me. It's crazy, but anyway, it is what it is. I think the Lions played Saturday, no?
The Lions played this weekend, but from what I'm hearing is that Eddie interviewed, like, it might have been late last week, actually. I feel like I saw the headline of Eddie interviewing before yesterday is what I'm saying. And Ben Johnson hire just came out yesterday.
Did the Lions play Saturday? I'll tell you right now because I know I got the text message. Did the Lions play Saturday?
Saturday, yeah.
Ben Johnson and Eddie George interviewed Sunday for the Chicago Bears.
All right, and then they hired Ben Johnson yesterday. So to your
But
point,
Ben had already interviewed via Zoom 3 times.
Yeah. Got you.
Eddie went in person because I talked to Walter Payton's son, Jarrett. Eddie went in person on Sunday.
Yep, got you. Makes sense.
So I'm just saying, and then you hire Ben yesterday. Is what it is.